In this tutorial, we are going to learn Amazon Bedrock. You'll be blown away by its capabilities. Its text generation mechanisms are competitor to ChatGPT and an amazing price performance. I'm first going to walk through its capabilities, how it can answer complex queries and generate text. I'll then show you how to program for its interfaces and then walk you through how to generate images using Stable Diffusion. Amazon Bedrock encompasses multiple models from multiple vendors, and you can query them in a single interface. Without further ado, let's get started. I'm in my AWS console. Let's go into Amazon Bedrock. Select the service from here. You need to select a region where Amazon Bedrock is available. As of now, it's not available in Sydney region. In my case, I'm going to select North Virginia region. You can either select from here, or alternatively, you can select it from here. Before you can start working with Amazon Bedrock, you need to enable the models. If you don't, if you go into chat, you will see that there's no models available as of now. Same for text. You can see that there's no any base models available. Same for images. Therefore, you first need to enable models, and to do that, go to Model Access, click Edit, and then I want Titan 1 G1 Text 1 and Anthorpic modules. You can read the end user license agreement because these models are provided by different parties, and based on that, you need to read through the pricing, the conditions under which you can use these models. So click Save. So model access is submitted, and you need to make sure that it is granted before you can use these models. You can later change these selection. Again, if you want to do that, click Edit. Let's add all the other remaining models and click Save Changes. So now I have access to all these models. The next step is to go there and then play around with this one before we start programming for these models. Before we start programming, let's play around with chat to understand how it works. So select the model that you want to query. In this case, I'm going to use Anthorpic Claude V2. And then I'm going to ask a question. Who is Barack Obama? And then run this. Now, of course, this is a single short question. There's no much context into this conversation. As you can see, it generates some text, giving information about the President of United States. Let's select another question, where he lived. And it now knows about Barack Obama. So this already know that he here refers to Barack Obama rather than some random person. So the chat gives you a conversation and it maintains the history of your conversation. Let's clear this. And let's ask a more advanced question here. So in this case, I'm going to say sulfuric acid reacts with sodium chloride, and these are the chemicals I want to find. And it's now going to give the answer for chemical 1 and chemical 2, and then give a proper valid answer. You can also ask a more advanced question by giving some context. So in this case, for example, let's say I'm going to give a few tweets and then give it sentiment so that it can learn what's the sentiment of the sentences, and then derive the sentiment of the last one. This new music video was incredible, and its sentiment it categorized as positive. So you now have an idea how this chat works, and let's now try to program for Bedrock API. The easiest way to do that is to go to text section and then use the API that you can copy. So let's select the model that we want to operate. So in this case is Anthropic model. So let's ask a simple question called what is Paris? As if we don't know what this city is about. And then run the query. And it's going to go there and then give some information about Paris. Looks good. We can view the API request and then use these parameters to invoke it. So you can either use .NET API, Python, JavaScript to operate. The sample code is given in this GitHub repository. Feel free to clone it. And then you will find a .NET code. Feel free to open it with Visual Studio Community Edition. I'll give you some samples in Python shortly. For the moment, just use these code examples so you get an idea how it works. So I have a program. This is the starting point. We just take the credentials. In my development machine, I have a profile called my dev profile. What I did was I installed AWS CLI and I did AWS configure profile, my dev profile. And then I added the access key and secret key of my IAM user. And I set the default region to US East 1. And my profile is created. If you want to know how to create an IAM user and create an access key and secret key, check the description of this video for more information. You see that I have a user created called my dev user. And this dev user has security credentials, which I have created an access key and a secret key. Now this is the access key I have created and it has a secret key that I have assigned. And for the permissions, I have created my Bedrock policy. So if you expand this, you will see that it has this permission. All right. The details of this permission is already given in this Git repository. You can see that you need to attach this policy before you can operate with Amazon Bedrock APIs. So that looks good. So my development environment city, I'm going to read this profile, these credentials, and then pass it to this. And let's run the sample one. So the sample one is very simple. I'm going to get these credentials and then create Amazon Bedrock client and then going to invoke this. Now these classes came through some NuGet packages I have added. So the libraries for that are given here. If you go into manage NuGet packages, you see that I have installed AWS SDK Bedrock Runtime and AWS SDK Bedrock and some other classes that I need to operate. So those classes will expose these namespaces. And what I'm doing here is create an Amazon Bedrock runtime client and then create a request. And I need to provide the model ID, content time accept. Now these values came from Amazon Bedrock API view request. So the model ID is Anthorpic Claude v2, and that's what I have provided here. And the content type is application JSON, and I'm going to accept application.json, and the body is this. Right? And you will see some parameters like max token samples, temperature. So these are some parameters that you can use to configure the output. So I use these values and then set them here. So each model will have different ways of querying. So the prompt, in this case, the body is depends on the Anthorpic Claude v2. If you are querying Amazon Titan models, the body is going to differ. And same for any other models. So different vendors going to provide different models, and based on that, this body is going to change. So what I'm doing here is sending this query. As you can see that there's max token sample is 300. So that will define how many words will be output by this model when you send this query. And also I'm not going to invoke this method. Of course, you can invoke it as an asynchronous method, but I just take the result and then show the body. So let's run this. So in this case, I'm going to run the body and then see what's the output. It's going to take some time because I'm not streaming the content. So when the result comes, it's not going to show it as and when the text is outputted from the model. So it shows everything in one go, and there's no any gradual construction of the sentences. So that looks good. Now let's try to understand how to get the result as and when the model start creating them. You will see an option for some models called streaming. When streaming is enabled, if you ask that question, for example, what is Paris? You will get the results as and when it is generated. So you can see that it's keep typing. So that looks good. If you disable streaming and ask the same question, let's say, what is Paris? You will see it's going to return the result in one go. So it's going to take some time, process it, as you can see that it's running, and then give the result back. So let's see how to enable streaming in our code. In my code, let's disable sample 1 and enable sample 2, where you have an example for streaming. So what I'm doing here is the same thing, accepting the Claude v2, accepting application JSON, that all looks good. The prompt is also the same. But instead of a normal request, I'm going to use this invoke model with response stream request, and it's going to give me chunks. So I'm going to invoke the request with invoke model with response stream async, and it's going to give me results as chunks. And I take these results, so it's an interface called our event stream event, and I cast it to payload paths. And I'm then going to print out these small segments or parts that it's going to return. So let's run this. So you can see that it's now returning small segments rather than waiting for a long time and returning everything in one go. You will see that a stop reason for each end of these sentences. You can see this stop reason is null. But when you reach the end of the stream, you will see that the stop reason is max tokens is reached. You can fiddle around with the query parameters. For example, let's say you need 400 max tokens, and you want to change the sentence that it's generating. For example, let's put the temperature like 0.5. So it tend to select less probable words. So it's tend to create more very unusual content. You can set the temperature, and let's now run it again. And in this time, it's going to generate a different set of sentences, and also it will create more chunks because we have increased that max token limits. These parameters, feel free to go and then check the model provider. They have their own definitions, how these parameters are supposed to be configured. Over time, AWS is going to add more and more models, and they will have their own set of parameters. Let's now play with image generation. Before that, you need to make sure if you go to model access that you have enabled image related models. In this case, we have Stabiliy AI Stable Diffusion. So that's already enabled. And then go into image, and then let's write a prompt to generate an image. So let's say something like a photo of an old man in a cafe with a dog. So that looks good. Let's run this. So you get that image. And if you don't like the style, you can of course say something like a cartoon of an old man in a cafe with a dog. So let's run this. So the style will change. That looks good. Let's keep the same sentence, photo of an old man in a cafe with a dog, and you get the similar result. You can of course change these parameters. These parameters of course depends on the model. In this case, prompt strength, generation steps, seeds, they all depends on the Stabiliy AI Stable Diffusion. If it is another model, it will be different. So like before, let's view the API request. So this is the input for that. Stability model ID is stability.stable diffusion x1v0. Content type is application JSON. So let's use this one in our program and then generate some images. Let's disable sample 2 and then enable sample 3 and then run it. So if you go into sample 3, the invocation is similar to what we did with text. We are going to use Amazon Bedrock Runtime Client, create a request. As you can see, the model ID, content type, and accept. All these values came from this view API request. So the same values that I have given. I give that prompt and pass these parameters like the seed, steps, and then I'm going to get a stream out of that. And once I have the result is going to be a JSON file, and that JSON document has a base 64 encoded images. So if we run this, you will see that it's going to now run the sample 3 and then going to return a JSON result. As you can see here, if you view the JSON result, and you will have the result status as success, and under artifacts, you have an array, and there you will find a long string called base 64. That's where the image is. You need to convert into a byte stream and then save it as a file. So all what I'm doing here is checking whether the JSON result is in good shape. So let's run through this, and it's going to get this result and then save it into the file. You'll see that it's created a file called sample31, and that has the image that we see in our console. If you want to learn more about Bedrock, feel free to go through this workshop called Amazon Bedrock Workshop, and it has some good material that you can try at home. So if you go to step-by-step guideline, this workshop mainly uses Python as it's a programming language. So if you go into, for example, prompt engineering, it walks you through how to create these prompts, the theory behind that, and how to generate text with some Python examples. So if you go into these text generation, it has some notebook examples which will walk you through how to install certain Python modules if you are into Python. And so you need to have the Botto framework and then query the model. Same like with the .NET, all what you're going to do here is, instead of using .NET API, you are using Python API. In this case, you are going to get a Bedrock client and then invoke it. If you are going to use query it, you will very likely use the Bedrock runtime. This is like invoke model with response streams. So this is where it's going to gradually output the content. Same code, but in Python. Cloudopian, if you like this video, remember to subscribe to the channel and thumbs up. See you next time.